The Cyberpunk 2077 situation has yet again taken another absolutely insane turn as far as the video game industry is concerned, because we've never seen anything quite like this before. Now, of course, I have made a bunch of videos talking about Cyberpunk 2077 because it's been a very interesting situation. I had my first video where everyone disagreed with me and booed at me and threw tomatoes at me, but it's okay, I forgive you, because in the end, I was kind of right. I was always concerned about the console version of this game, and of course since then there has been so many crazy things that have been happening. The game of course released on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, the systems that it was originally intended to release on, as this game was announced back in 2012 before these systems were even a thing, and of course the experience was definitely lacking, especially compared to the PC version of the game. It was a bit better on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, but ever since the game released, and primarily released on consoles, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding it. We've covered pretty much everything, but then late last night, Sony did something that was absolutely unprecedented in the video game industry. And that's the situation I want to talk about going on right now. Sort of the fallout from this and what it means for the future of video games, because I honestly feel like this is a much bigger deal than a lot of people are really completely understanding when it comes to video games, because we've never seen anything like this before, and I think it's going to be very telling for the future. So ever since Cyberpunk 2077 was announced to be releasing on December 10th, a lot of people were really looking forward to this game, but there was one thing that was very weird about it. We never really saw the game running on a console. Sure, Xbox did some presentations showcasing the game as they had the marketing rights to it, but we never saw it actually running on the Xbox One. We never saw it running on the PlayStation 4, and I thought that was very suspicious. And then of course we realized that my suspicions were actually correct. The PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One versions were broken and buggy messes. Yes, things were better on the Xbox Series X and of course the PlayStation 5, but the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4 versions, the versions that we had been talking about this entire time, because the game was originally supposed to come out before the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X were released on the marketplace, were not good versions of this game. The PC version was obviously the priority. Then of course CD Projekt Red released a statement saying, hey, if you guys are unhappy, we're sorry, we're doing patches, go get your refunds through PSN or Xbox Live. And then people quickly realized, well, that wasn't really the case, because nothing additional had been done in order to get a refund through PSN or the Xbox Live service. CD Projekt Red didn't communicate with these companies to tell them to give consumers refunds. They just expected people to be able to get refunds magically, because I guess that's how refunds maybe work where they're from, in Sweden, but obviously that's not how things worked. And then late last night, of course, the big bombshell dropped, and everyone made a video on this. I was gonna make a video on it, but I was watching the Raiders game, and it was a pretty good football game, but obviously I sort of wanted to sit on it a little bit. After I saw everyone talking about it, I want to see, well, what's sort of the fallout from this situation? So the big story obviously is that Sony has officially removed Cyberpunk 2077 from the PlayStation Network. You can no longer buy a digital copy of this game, and Sony gave the following statement on it. Sony Interactive Entertainment strives to ensure a high level of customer satisfaction. Therefore, we will begin to offer a full refund for all gamers who have purchased Cyberpunk 2077 via PlayStation Store. Sony Interactive Entertainment will also be removing Cyberpunk 2077 from the PlayStation 4 store until further notice. Once we have confirmed that you have purchased Cyberpunk 2077 via PlayStation Store, we will begin processing your refund. Please note that the completion of the refund may vary based on your payment method and financial institution. Now, obviously, this is a massive deal. We're not talking about some small indie game that maybe violated a copyright claim or maybe passed through certification without meaning to pass through certification and had some issues. We're talking about a AAA game that has been in development for 8 years. 8 years is the development cycle of Cyberpunk 2077. Almost kind of like Duke Nukem Forever, and we all know how that turned out. But I've never seen Sony actually step in and offer refunds for this game. That's how big the backlash has been from this situation. And like I said, it is unprecedented in the video game industry. We have never seen anything like this before. Now, why is Sony actually doing this? I think it's not really as cut and dry as a lot of people are making it out to be. Because yes, at its core, Cyberpunk 2077 is a very buggy and glitchy experience, but I mean, there's been lots of buggy games. There's been lots of glitchy games out there as well, and they have never been pulled from the store. I think this is really boiling down to, you know, lies and deception reception from CD Projekt Red, basically saying that the game was going to look and play like this without giving any sort of indication of how the console versions were going to run. So we pretty much had to assume from all of the marketing that we saw that what that experience that was being shown was going to be at least very similar on these other systems, and of course it wasn't the case. So I think this is a bit more of a proactive thing, because that way, you know, people aren't just buying this game just to download it and then get a refund and then still have the game available to play on their PlayStation 4. This sort of makes sense to be a very proactive move from Sony. Following that up, CD Projekt Red actually gave a statement talking about the Cyberpunk 2077 situation and said the following. Following our discussion with PlayStation, a decision was made to temporarily suspend digital distribution of Cyberpunk 2077 on the PlayStation Store. You can still buy physical versions of the game in brick and mortar stores and online. All purchased digital and physical copies of the game will continue to receive support and updates as we continue to improve your experience. According to our knowledge, starting today, everyone who is not willing to wait for updates and wants to refund their digital copy of the game can do so by submitting a request at www.playstation.com/cyberpunk2077 refunds. There's some dashes in there, but you see it on the screen. We are working hard to bring Cyberpunk 2077 back to PlayStation Store as soon as possible. So once again, this is the problem with this whole thing, is that CD Projekt Red is still not admitting that they did something wrong. Just like in their initial statement where they said they should have focused more on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One versions of the game instead of the next gen and of course the PC versions of the game. Well, no shit, Sherlock. The game was never supposed to be intended for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. You got lucky and those systems came out before the game ended up coming out on consoles. It was originally supposed to come out many times, but the latest one was of course in April of 2020, before those systems would have even been on the market. So no matter what, you would have ran into this situation. I don't understand why it's so hard to just say, you know what, we screwed this up, we screwed the pooch on this, we are sorry. But they can't seem to do that. They just sort of skirt around it and say, oh, we're gonna make things better, there's gonna be a patch in January, there's gonna be a patch in February, it's gonna make the experience better. Just come out and say that you screwed up. Of course, there's been lots of fallout from this situation as far as stock is concerned. CD Projekt Red stock is absolutely in the toilet, and of course, lots of people have been giving their 2 cents about this situation on social media, YouTube, pretty much everything. But there is one individual that I do want to highlight, because I find this very ironic for them to be sort of taking a shot at the Cyberpunk situation, and that is Mr. Jeff Keighley. Mr. Jeff Keighley did the following tweet saying, "Yellow flag on the play," obviously a play on the whole CD Projekt Red sort of template for where they do their announcements and talk about things. But let me refresh your memory, Mr. Keighley, because you are kind of one of the reasons why this whole thing exists. Looking back at your Game Awards that also happened on December 10th, there was a certain game that won a certain award there that sort of perpetuates this sort of stuff to happen within the industry. That, of course, was the best ongoing game. Now, of course, when I think of an ongoing game, I usually think of like a free-to-play game or something like that. A game that at its core is the base experience, but then they sort of expand upon it. A game like, you know, Fortnite, Apex Legends, those sort of games that rely heavily on microtransactions, but you still get that same core experience. However, the game that won Best Ongoing Game at the Game Awards 2020 was not a game like that. It was actually No Man's Sky, or as people used to call it, No Man's Lie. Do you not remember the whole situation that they promised all of this stuff when that game was coming out, and then it delivered on absolutely nothing, and it took literally years to get it to the point of where the game was supposed to be as far as what was expected by the consumers based on what these companies told us? And now it's the same sort of thing with Cyberpunk. It was based upon all of these built up promises and all of this hype, and then of course it did not meet those expectations. So who are you to take a shot at the Cyberpunk 2077 situation? Like, I just find that very ironic, especially considering that No Man's Sky was considered the best ongoing game. Because could Cyberpunk 2077 be the best ongoing game because they get a few more years to polish this game and make it in a playable state? You know, this is something that keeps arising due to the fact of how video games are produced nowadays, with all these crunches, with all these sort of, you know, upper management figures saying you got to get this game out by this time, you know, stockholders and shareholders. It's becoming a very commercialized industry, and because of this, things are just having to be churned out, and then, oh, we could fix it later, we could patch the game later, we could do this, we could do that, and it gets very frustrating. As someone who who reviews games, let me tell you guys how this sort of works. When I get a copy of a game, I review that game based on the copy I get. I don't factor in patches. Companies are sometimes like, well, there'll be a patch a few days after launch, and it's like, do you want me to review this game, or do you want me to review the game as how it might be? I always just look at the game at how it is at the time that I get that game, because it's not fair to assume that patches are going to fix things. It's not fair to assume that patches are going to come along and fix key issues. There are some things that patches cannot just really do unless you're building the whole game from the ground up. And I think it's ridiculous that the video game industry relies so heavily on patches nowadays. So this is a great thing. You know what? This is a great thing, because this is not a small game that is being picked on. This is a game that was in development for 8 years. This is a game that was supposed to be a huge AAA blockbuster experience. And CD Projekt Red lied completely along the way with this version of the game when it comes to the consoles by deceiving people and leading them to believe they were getting one thing, and instead they ended up with another. So I think this is a landmark case in the video game industry, because we've never seen a company like Sony completely pull this game now. But then you have to wonder, is Xbox going to sort of follow suit with this situation and also pull Cyberpunk 2077 off of their Xbox Live service? You got to remember, Microsoft paid a lot of money to have Cyberpunk's 2077 marketing exclusive to the Xbox. That's why everything you saw for Cyberpunk 2077 was either done by CD Projekt Red or done by Microsoft themselves, and Sony never did anything with it because it was exclusive when it comes to the marketing for Microsoft that they paid, you know, probably millions of dollars for in anticipation that this game was going to be this huge blockbuster. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Microsoft reacts to this. But I think the most interesting thing is, what does this mean for the future of games? Because essentially we won. Gamers won. You know, this is something that you're always told, you know, oh, well, just, you know, shut up and take it. You know, if you don't like the game, you know, don't buy it. But there's certain situations where, you know, you get misled. You get led to believe that something is going to be one thing, and it ends up being something completely different. It ends up being nothing what you necessarily expected. And many people, you know, at the commonplace thing was just to be like, oh, go on Twitter and bitch about it. But now it's like, we have a voice here. We have a, you know, an opinion that is strong enough to make Sony want to pull this game and have CD Projekt Red, you know, pretty much back on their heels trying to backtrail and, you know, fix this situation. And I think it's very interesting, because if anything, what this is going to do is this makes a landmark case to show stockholders and these investors that don't know shit about video games that, hey, this is what happens when you rush a game to the market. This is what happens when you release a half-baked product onto the market. Would you rather wait a little bit and make more money, or would you rather us rush this game to the market, our stocks plummet like CD Projekt Red has ended up doing right now, and then you're out of even more money? So it's going to be very interesting with the future. I can't wait to see what happens next in this situation. Is, you know, Microsoft going to have to pull the trigger and remove it off of Xbox Live? I don't think they will, because they spent way too much damn money on the marketing for this game. But I just wanted to share my thoughts on this, because, you know, everyone had already shared their thoughts on it, but I kind of wanted to wait because I thought I could give sort of a different perspective, and I feel like I did a good job of that. So let me know in the comments section down below, well, what you think of this whole situation. Are you going to try to get a refund? Have you already successfully gotten a refund? If so, what games are you going to buy with your, you know, your refund money? If you got a Nintendo Switch, I just did a video like 2 days ago talking about 20 great Nintendo Switch games that you should check out, and I'm sure there's a game on there that's cheap enough to where you could buy that and then something else that's on sale, and, you know, everyone wins. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel as well. It's now like 4:45 in the morning, so I guess I'll try to sleep or something like that. Catch you guys on the next one. Later.